Deep in the Vatican's secret archives sits an artifact so dangerous that seeing it could shatter everything we believe about human history. In the basement of the Smithsonian, thousands of giant skeletons remain locked away from public view. Tonight, we're revealing what the world's most powerful institutions don't want you to see. Imagine walking through the halls of the world's most prestigious museums. You admire ancient pottery, marvel at Egyptian sarcophagi, and read carefully crafted descriptions of human civilization's timeline. But what you're seeing represents less than 1% of what these institutions actually possess. Deep beneath your feet, in climate-controlled vaults and restricted archives, lie artifacts so controversial, so paradigm-shifting, that they've been deliberately hidden from public view for decades. The question isn't whether these forbidden artifacts exist, it's why powerful institutions go to such extraordinary lengths to keep them secret. Tonight, we'll journey into the shadowy world of archaeological suppression, where discoveries that could rewrite textbooks are instead locked away in unmarked boxes, filed under classifications that ensure they'll never see daylight. Our first stop takes us to the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C., one of the world's most respected research organizations. On the surface, it's a beacon of education and discovery. But according to multiple whistleblowers, including former employees and independent researchers, the Smithsonian's basement levels contain something extraordinary and troubling. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, newspapers across America regularly reported the discovery of giant human skeletons. The New York Times, the Washington Post, and hundreds of local newspapers documented findings of human remains measuring 7 to 12 feet in height. These weren't isolated incidents or misidentified animal bones. They were systematic discoveries, complete with photographs, measurements, and detailed archaeological documentation. One particularly well-documented case occurred in 1912 near Lake Delavan, Wisconsin. Local newspapers reported the discovery of 18 giant skeletons, some measuring over 9 feet tall, with skulls significantly larger than modern humans. The artifacts were carefully excavated by the Beloit College Archaeology Department and, according to official records, were sent to the Smithsonian for further study. But here's where the story takes a disturbing turn. When researchers began investigating these giant skeleton reports in the 1990s, they discovered something shocking. The Smithsonian had no record of receiving these artifacts. When pressed for information, officials claimed the specimens had been lost or misplaced over time. This same pattern emerged for dozens of similar discoveries across the United States. Dr. David Childress, an archaeologist who spent decades investigating these cases, uncovered internal documents suggesting a deliberate policy of suppression. According to his research, the Smithsonian had not lost these artifacts. They had deliberately removed them from public access to maintain the established narrative of human evolution and ancient history. But why would such a respected institution engage in this kind of cover-up? The answer lies in the implications these discoveries would have on our understanding of ancient human civilization. If humans of extraordinary size lived in North America thousands of years ago, it would challenge fundamental assumptions about human migration patterns, ancient technology, and the capabilities of prehistoric societies. The giant skeleton controversy becomes even more intriguing when we examine similar discoveries worldwide. In the 1950s, archaeologists working in the Jordan Valley discovered human remains of unusual size in ancient burial sites. These skeletons, measuring between 8 and 10 feet in height, were extensively photographed and documented. Yet within months of their discovery, access to the site was restricted, and the artifacts disappeared into private collections. Similar patterns emerge in Europe, South America, and Asia. Ancient texts from multiple cultures described races of giants who possessed advanced knowledge and technology. The Bible mentions the Nephilim, described as giants in the earth. Greek mythology speaks of titans and heroes of extraordinary stature. Hindu texts describe the Daityas, beings of immense size and power. These aren't isolated folklore tales. They represent a consistent global tradition of giant humanoids in ancient times. Moving beyond giant skeletons, our investigation takes us to another category of forbidden artifacts, objects that display impossible technological sophistication for their supposed age. In museum storage facilities around the world, researchers have documented artifacts that appear to incorporate advanced metallurgy, precision engineering, and even electrical components. One of the most controversial examples is the Baghdad Battery, discovered in Iraq in 1936. This 2,000-year-old clay jar contains a copper cylinder and iron rod configuration that, when filled with an acidic solution, produces electrical current. Mainstream archaeologists dismiss it as a coincidence, claiming it was used for storing scrolls, but independent researchers have successfully replicated the design, demonstrating its clear function as an ancient battery. The implications are staggering. If ancient civilizations possessed electrical knowledge, what other technologies might they have developed? And why are such discoveries marginalized or ignored by mainstream academia? The answer becomes clearer when we examine the institutional pressures facing modern archaeology. University funding, peer review processes, and career advancement all depend on conforming to established historical timelines. Researchers who pursue controversial theories or anomalous artifacts often find themselves professionally ostracized, their funding eliminated, and their work dismissed without proper investigation. Dr. Michael Cremo, a researcher who spent decades documenting suppressed archaeological evidence, describes this phenomenon as knowledge filtering. According to his research, the scientific establishment systematically excludes discoveries that don't fit predetermined theoretical frameworks. This isn't necessarily a conscious conspiracy. It's an institutional bias that maintains accepted paradigms by ignoring contradictory evidence. Our journey into forbidden artifacts next takes us to the Vatican Secret Archives, officially known as the Vatican Apostolic Archives. This massive repository, containing over 80 kilometers of shelving, houses documents and artifacts spanning nearly 2 millennia. While some materials have been gradually released to researchers, vast sections remain completely restricted, accessible only to a select few Vatican scholars. According to former Vatican employees and independent researchers, these restricted areas contain archaeological artifacts that could fundamentally challenge Christian doctrine and historical understanding. Among the most controversial alleged holdings are documents describing advanced ancient civilizations, artifacts displaying impossible technological sophistication, and evidence of non-human intelligences interacting with ancient cultures. One particularly persistent rumor involves artifacts recovered from archaeological sites in the Holy Land during the Crusades. These objects, according to insider accounts, demonstrate technological capabilities that shouldn't have existed in ancient times. Rather than risk challenging established religious and historical narratives, Vatican officials allegedly chose to classify these discoveries permanently. The Vatican's position is understandable from an institutional perspective. Religious authority depends on maintaining consistent theological frameworks. Archaeological discoveries that contradict established doctrine could potentially undermine centuries of teaching and belief. However, this institutional priority comes at the cost of historical truth and scientific understanding. Similar patterns of suppression exist in archaeological institutions worldwide. The Egyptian Museum in Cairo, for example, reportedly maintains extensive basement collections containing artifacts too controversial for public display. These include objects that appear to incorporate advanced materials, precision manufacturing techniques, and design elements that challenge conventional understanding of ancient Egyptian capabilities. Dr. Zahi Hawass, former Secretary General of Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities, has been accused by multiple researchers of deliberately suppressing discoveries that don't fit established Egyptian chronology. Independent archaeologists report being denied access to sites, having their research permits revoked, and being excluded from important excavations without explanation. The economic implications also cannot be ignored. Egypt's tourism industry generates billions of dollars annually, largely based on maintaining romantic notions of ancient Egyptian civilization. Discoveries that suggest far more advanced ancient technologies or evidence of non-Egyptian influences on ancient monuments could potentially disrupt this lucrative industry. But perhaps the most shocking category of suppressed artifacts involves objects that appear to demonstrate knowledge of astronomical phenomena that ancient cultures supposedly couldn't have observed. The Nebra Sky Disk, discovered in Germany in 1999, displays accurate star maps and astronomical calculations that required sophisticated mathematical knowledge. While this artifact is now publicly displayed, researchers report that similar objects remain hidden in private collections and institutional vaults. These astronomical artifacts are particularly significant because they suggest ancient civilizations possessed advanced scientific knowledge that contradicts conventional historical timelines. If ancient peoples could accurately map stellar positions, calculate planetary movements, and predict celestial events, what other sophisticated knowledge might they have possessed? The suppression extends beyond individual artifacts to entire archaeological sites. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, once dismissed as impossible by mainstream archaeology, has now been confirmed as an 11,000-year-old complex that predates Stonehenge by thousands of years. This discovery forced archaeologists to completely revise their understanding of Neolithic capabilities and civilization development. But according to local archaeologists, Göbekli Tepe represents only a fraction of similar sites in the region. Ground-penetrating radar has identified numerous other ancient complexes of similar age and sophistication. However, excavation permits for these sites have been repeatedly denied, effectively keeping potentially revolutionary discoveries buried indefinitely. The pattern repeats globally. In Bosnia, Dr. Samir Osmanagic has spent years investigating what he claims are ancient pyramid structures larger and older than those in Egypt. While controversial, geological surveys have confirmed the presence of artificial construction elements and sophisticated internal chambers. Yet mainstream archaeology has mounted an aggressive campaign to discredit the research and prevent further investigation. Similar suppression occurs with underwater archaeological sites. As sea levels have changed over millennia, vast areas of ancient coastline now lie beneath the ocean. Sonar mapping and underwater archaeology have identified numerous artificial structures in these submerged areas, suggesting advanced ancient civilizations existed in now flooded regions. The most famous example is the underwater structures off the coast of Japan, near Yonaguni. These stepped, geometric formations appear clearly artificial and have been dated to approximately 10,000 years old. If confirmed as human-made, they would represent evidence of advanced civilization at the end of the last ice age. However, research access has been severely limited, and mainstream academia continues to dismiss the structures as natural formations, despite compelling evidence to the contrary. The question remains: what drives this systematic suppression of archaeological evidence? The answers are complex and multifaceted, involving institutional inertia, economic interests, religious considerations, and fundamental questions about human history and capabilities. From an institutional perspective, established archaeological and historical paradigms represent decades of research, thousands of academic careers, and billions of dollars in educational infrastructure. Acknowledging that fundamental assumptions about ancient civilizations are incorrect would require massive revisions to textbooks, curricula, and established theories. The professional and financial costs of such revisions create powerful incentives to maintain existing paradigms regardless of contradictory evidence. Religious institutions face similar pressures. Many archaeological discoveries challenge traditional creation narratives, historical timelines, and theological frameworks. Rather than risk doctrinal confusion or theological crisis, religious authorities often choose to classify or suppress problematic discoveries. This approach protects institutional authority but comes at the cost of historical and scientific truth. Economic factors also play significant roles. Tourism industries in many countries depend on maintaining romantic, accessible narratives about ancient civilizations. Complex, controversial, or paradigm-shifting discoveries could potentially disrupt carefully cultivated tourist markets worth billions of dollars annually. But perhaps most importantly, many suppressed discoveries challenge fundamental assumptions about human capability, intelligence, and historical development. If ancient civilizations possessed advanced technologies, sophisticated scientific knowledge, and capabilities that rival or exceed modern achievements, it raises profound questions about the nature of human progress and the assumptions underlying contemporary civilization. The implications extend beyond academic curiosity. If ancient peoples developed sustainable technologies, advanced materials, or sophisticated social systems that have been lost over time, recovering this knowledge could have immense practical value for contemporary challenges like climate change, resource depletion, and social organization. Consider the implications of ancient metallurgy techniques that produce Damascus steel, a material whose properties modern science still cannot fully replicate. Or Roman concrete that has lasted thousands of years while modern concrete degrades within decades. These aren't just historical curiosities. They represent potentially revolutionary technologies that could address contemporary infrastructure challenges. The suppression of such knowledge represents not just historical censorship, but a practical loss of potentially valuable solutions to modern problems. By maintaining institutional narratives at the expense of investigation and discovery, we may be depriving ourselves of ancient wisdom and technologies that could benefit contemporary civilization. The solution requires fundamental changes in how archaeological research is conducted, funded, and evaluated. Independent research organizations, transparent peer review processes, and open access to archaeological data could help break the institutional barriers that currently suppress controversial discoveries. Digital technologies also offer new possibilities for preserving and sharing suppressed information. Online databases, crowdsourced research, and blockchain-based authentication systems could create alternative channels for documenting and investigating controversial archaeological evidence. Public awareness and demand for transparency represent perhaps the most powerful tools for addressing archaeological suppression. When citizens understand the extent to which potentially revolutionary discoveries are being withheld from public knowledge, institutional pressure for transparency and open investigation becomes increasingly difficult to resist. The forbidden artifacts locked away in museum basements, institutional vaults, and private collections represent more than historical curiosities. They represent fundamental questions about human capability, ancient wisdom, and the nature of civilization itself. By demanding access to this suppressed knowledge, we take the first step toward understanding the full scope of human achievement and potential. The journey into forbidden archaeology reveals a pattern of institutional suppression that extends across cultures, continents, and centuries. From giant skeletons in America to advanced technologies in ancient Iraq, from Vatican archives to Egyptian museum basements, evidence suggests that our understanding of ancient civilizations has been deliberately limited and controlled. This isn't necessarily the result of conscious conspiracy, but rather institutional inertia, economic pressures, and the natural human tendency to maintain comfortable paradigms rather than confront challenging new evidence. However, the cost of this suppression extends beyond academic curiosity to practical applications that could benefit contemporary civilization. As we continue to uncover evidence of advanced ancient civilizations, sophisticated prehistoric technologies, and extraordinary human achievements in the distant past, the question becomes not whether such discoveries exist, but whether we have the courage to acknowledge their implications and pursue their investigation despite institutional resistance. The artifacts locked away from public view represent keys to understanding not just where we came from, but where we might be going. By demanding transparency, supporting independent research, and maintaining curiosity about our ancient past, we take steps toward recovering the full scope of human achievement and potential. In the end, the most forbidden artifact of all may be the truth itself, the uncomfortable reality that our ancestors achieved far more than we've been taught to believe, and that recovering their knowledge could revolutionize our understanding of human capability and potential. The vaults remain locked, the archives stay restricted, and the forbidden artifacts continue to gather dust in basement storage rooms around the world. But knowledge, like truth itself, has a way of eventually breaking free from even the most carefully constructed barriers. The question is not whether these secrets will eventually be revealed, but whether we'll be ready to accept what they tell us about the extraordinary civilizations that came before us.